All right, so next up, everyone, I want to introduce another one of angels in the United Nations, a dear friend of mine. Please welcome, I don't know where he is, Satya Tripathi. He's the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations. He's also the chairman of SIF Sustainability for India Finance. He is one of the greatest souls. Where is he? Oh, Satya! Okay, I didn't see it. It's my eyes. I need glasses. And so please welcome Satya Tripathi, who is, I have to say, in India, one of the programs that they have created is they have funded 11 million women in India in these self-help groups. And the government, when they save money, he'll go into it more than me, the government matches the money. Can you imagine? To take these women out of poverty. So please welcome Satya Tripathi, the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations Environmental Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, and welcome to the United Nations. It's our great pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to these hallowed premises. I call it hallowed not because of the size of the building, and it's a heritage building, but because of what it does around the world. And this is the nerve center of the United Nations and the 50-plus agencies, funds, and programs. Well, let's talk about women, because today we are celebrating Women's Entrepreneurship Day. Do you know how many women entrepreneurs are there in the world? Anybody? Make a guess. 4 billion? Because every woman on the planet is an entrepreneur. Let me tell you why. My respect for women does not come from some cosmetic understanding of gender mainstreaming, equality. I'll tell you two little stories. The first is that of my grandmother. She was a widow when I first knew her, of course. She was widowed at 20, at a time in India when widows were invisible. They didn't exist. They either went away, or if they lived in the house, they were in some corner that nobody would see them. So 4 feet 8 inches tall. And this is a woman who's responsible for my standing here today. Her husband died at 20, at a time where she should be invisible. She stood up for herself, for her 2 young sons, ran the family farm. We had about 100 acres of farm, employing about 200 people. And one of the greatest lessons I learned, I was 9, and I was learning little arithmetic and mathematics and all. So she would give away money when somebody's sick in the farm, families and all. So one day I say, Grandma, you're giving away money all the time. You keep no records of it. And I was the smart one, right? And so I said, why don't I help you? I was being very polite. Why don't I help you and write it down so that you can get your money back when you need it? She said, kid, sometimes it's good to forget. I never really understood what it meant at that time. Then I grew up to understand. But I went back to check with her. She was very old by then, and said, you told me this at one point of time. I know what it meant from my own understanding of the world now, what it really meant to you. She said, everything in the world is about human relationships. If you don't have a relationship, you don't exist, nothing else matters to you. So take care of your relationships at all times. Everything else will fall in place. I can tell you, I'm 56 now. This conversation I had with her was when I was 17. So in almost 40 years' time, I have never had an opportunity to revise that learning. Relationships are everything. And that's why women are so special, because they understand relationships 1,000 times better than men do. The second story, I was 16 and I started shaving. And like every young 16-year-old, I was the smartest one, Aristotle was once asked, he says, somebody told him, you are such a wise person, it must be a great burden for you because everybody comes to you for wisdom. He said, you must be kidding me. Every 16-year-old in the world knows everything about the world and beyond it. Who needs me? And that's a fact of life. You're 16, you know everything. And your mother is stupid, your father is stupid, because they really don't know. It's a different world. So I started shaving, and then I'm, the tap is running, and then I'm doing my thing, So I had seen a few adults do this, and so I'm just replicating them. My first day of glory. My mother comes with 4 buckets, big ones, 22 liters each. So puts them under the tap, doesn't tell me anything. And by the time I have finished, she's filled up 88 liters of water. Didn't tell me anything. I looked at her, I said, maybe she needs it for gardening or something, She goes away. The next morning, when I come to shave, she has a little jug of water, about a liter. And she says she has them separated into 2 half a liter each. And she tells me how to do it. She says, you can do it, shake it up here, and then clean it in the other one. Try how this works. And it worked perfectly well. In the last 40 years, I have a 17-year-old daughter. And so one of the greatest stories I tell her is this, and that was her math lesson. So I asked her, do you know how much water I have saved? And she calculated, she said, wow, it's more than 1 million liters of fresh water, just by not being stupid. So that brings me to the climate challenge and why women are so important to the conversation. I was talking to a minister recently, an important minister, without naming him, and I told him it's a man-made disaster. So he was being gender neutral. He said, no, I mean, it's human. We're all responsible. I said, really? When were women responsible for the decisions that were made that has brought us to the precipice that we are today? So it is, being respectful to gender, it is a man-made problem. It is our decisions over thousands of years that has brought us to where we are now. And where we are now, we're at 415 parts per million carbon concentration in the atmosphere. Last time we were there was 3 million years ago. The world is literally falling apart. In my own country, India, in the state of Kerala, which is called God's own country, those of you that have visited India and been to that state, it's a beautiful place. 2 years ago, they had a massive flood. And everybody said, oh, it's a flood, once in 100 years flood. Terrible. It literally decimated the place and the infrastructure. 2 years later, they have a flood that is even bigger than that. So there's no 100-year frequency anymore. The Caribbean, right in your backyard. California, the wildfires are happening with such frequency that people are now thinking it's an annual occurrence. Not once in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Because we have altered the living fabric beyond our understanding. The world has about 7.8 million species. We've already lost 1 million without even understanding how the fabric unravels, because everything is connected. It's only when we have avoided costs that we start realizing the bees are important, because now we put them in trucks and drive them 2,000 miles to do pollination, which they did for free. They never sent us a bill. So that's where we are. So women have to be at the forefront of this battle. It's not of your making, but it's our shared planet. And that is why you must, and then I commend the commissioner who talked about VNYC. I was talking to Wendy about a year ago about creating something called We Can, Women Entrepreneurs for Climate and Nature. Why? Because women have to be at the forefront of the battle. You understand conservation. You understand nature and nurture. At your very, your DNA is made up of that. Nobody ever trains a mother to take care of her children. Nobody. No mother has come, nobody goes to prep school. But you do it because that's who you are. You care, you're concerned, you're mindful of the surroundings, and that's why when women are in the leadership positions, the world flourishes. And that is why I'm so proud to be standing in front of you today to celebrate Women Entrepreneurship Day. Because when women are entrepreneurial, which they are across the planet, but you really need to turn your attention now to the climate and nature. Question everything. I'll leave you with the last thought that we suffer from something called the conspiracy of silence. We never talk about what is happening to our planet around our dinner tables, in our homes. We really need to start doing that. Children need to start growing up, understanding that the world as we know, we have actually destroyed the planet beyond our children's understanding. And I'm not being humble. It's just an admission of the reality that confronts us today. We really need to own up to what we are. We need to say sorry to our children, and we need to provide them the information and the education and the awareness that they so desperately need. Not in terms of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. That is not going to change the planet. That's good. That's important, sharing your views and all. But that's not action on the ground. And that's why I'm so proud that we're partnering with Keith, the CEO of Producers Market, and Wendy, and numerous other organizations. Wendy talked about the 11.5 million women. I mean, she gives me credit. It's not my work. I was a small facilitator in this whole process. But the work was done by a lot of other champions and the government of Andhra Pradesh, bringing together 11.5 million, the world's largest program, around self-help groups. So it's groups of 10 women each. So they pool their resources, and the government provides a 100% matching grant. And then that becomes like a little bank for them. So there are 1.15 million such groups in that state. And then we took that social capital to now converting 6 million farmers to zero chemical farming. And that's where Keith and his team are working on setting up the master plan for tracing, for certification, for market access, so that poor farmers, and come to think of it, these are all smallholder farmers. They have like a hectare of land or something on an average. 6 million farmers, 8 million hectares, so 1.3 hectares on an average. And that's all they have to take care of their families, their children, their education, and their health. And what is happening now, and mind you, this is not a boutique program. As of now, 750,000 farmers, mostly women, have actually dumped chemical farming and taken to natural farming. And that's a lesson in humility for us. We get around in these wonderful premises, and we talk about, and you talk to a bunch of bankers, and they tell you, oh, the risk profile is problematic. And there's no risk-reward premium. And then what am I going to make? Come to think of it, women farmers that have done this for 30 years or 40 years of chemical farming are willing to throw away that domain expertise for something that serves people and planet. What could be more celebratory than that? So to them and to all of you, congratulations and thank you.